And oh, okay, the meeting's being recorded. That's okay. Uh, do I have to hit continue? This stuff keeps popping on my thing here, guys. Sorry. Uh, so at the end, we'll have a chance to do some questions. We'll take them live. I'd like to do that, and it's always good to see everyone that's here. I've got some people out there that I know very well, and others of you I'm meeting today for the first time, and I want to say it's a pleasure to meet you. And please don't be shy about putting your face on the screen. It's always good for me to see who's out there when you're there. So, Marilyn, it's going to be up to you and I now, and I'm going to be listening to your instructions because we're going to go from this on to my getting on and sharing the screen with you. Are you there, Marilyn?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay.
Just hit the share screen. You're already
Screen, we're on it,
and
and
then go and open up your
open up
PowerPoint.
the thing. Okay.
Yep.
And we're opened up, and then we hit play. And
Amazing.
are we there? Can everybody
We
see
are
me?
there.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, let me get my script set up here in front of me so that I can go from there, and we'll get started. Okay, hi everybody, and thanks for zooming in with us today. I'm Frank L. Harkonnen, as Stephen said, and I'm here with you today to talk about Finnish saunas and Finnish log construction. Now, before we're finished today, I'll share a little sauna history, a little sauna lore, and something about my own experience with a sauna. And at the end, we'll do some questions. We Finns often think in terms of our American Finnish history, beginning with what has been called the Great Migration. And that was between 1880 and 1920. And that's understandable because that is when the largest migration happened. About 300,000 Finns came to the shores of America, including uh, including most of our forefathers. If you're Finnish, it's possible that your parents, or more likely, your parents or grandparents, came as a part of that group. My father and maternal grandparents were a part of that migration. I grew up in a Finnish community in central Idaho. Yes, there are Finns in Idaho, but there was a Finnish history long before the Great Migration. The first Finns came to America around 1640, arriving at the New Sweden colony located along the Delaware River in what is today New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. Although some came directly from Finland, most were forest Finns, who, a century earlier, had settled in the forests of Sweden at the invitation of the king, who wanted them to clear some of his vast forests for cultivating land. And that is something the Finns were good at. It is called Swidden agriculture, or the vernacular slash and burn farming that they had practiced for centuries. Unfortunately, after they had successfully established themselves in Sweden, they became unpopular with the natives, that would be the Swedes, who accused them of destroying their forests. The real reason, however, was that the newly established copper and mining interests wanted those trees that the Finns were cutting to use for their own charcoal. Coincidentally, the New Sweden colony venture had recently been launched, and the company was having difficulty recruiting Swedes who were willing to migrate to the New World. Keep in mind, at that time, Sweden was a world power and it had a small population, none of which had any desire to go to some godforsaken wilderness across some unforgiving ocean. So they came up with a plan. They declared the agricultural practices of the Finns illegal. Especially harsh was the 1647 Forestry Act, which outlawed and ruled out all slash and burn agriculture. As punishment, they conscripted the Finns, the forest Finns, and sent them to the New World so they could practice their slash and burn methods there, they said. Now, Swedish history claims the Finns chose to go. Well, yes, but you need to understand that they were given a choice of either going to New Sweden or going to jail. Not a very hard decision. And so they came and they brought two iconic cultural traditions: horizontal log building and sauna. That which became an American icon, loved by so many, the log cabin was introduced to the American architectural landscape by the Finns in New Sweden. And that icon, which characterizes Finnish culture, the sauna, was introduced to America also in the New Sweden colony. This icon has endured as an important part of our Finnish heritage for centuries and still is, although not so indispensable as it traditionally was. To understand the Finnish sauna, it's helpful to understand how they were built. So we turn here to the unique log construction utilized by the Finns. Now, because the log cabin is such an icon of American vernacular building, most people have a preconceived idea of how it appears without giving much thought, or any thought, to how it was constructed. Here we see a picture of Abraham Lincoln's log cabin, which is pretty much how most Americans generally visualize a log cabin to look. However, this isn't what the Finns built. Finnish log construction is unique. Unlike American and other nationalities' cabins, Finnish cabins have no chinking between the logs. The logs are tightly fitted with notched corners to hold them together. This type of construction was used in all of their log buildings, including the saunas. Okay, hold on, it's not moving for some reason. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. Sorry about that. My interest in Finnish log building began over 50 years ago when I restored a Finnish cabin at the Rosebery Museum. The cabin piqued my interest because it was different than the hundreds of American built cabins that I was accustomed to seeing in the woods of Idaho. Since then, I have restored several others, visited Finland 3 times, and for the past 10 years, I have spent the summers traveling and documenting Finnish log buildings throughout US and Canada. Centuries ago, the Finns developed a building technique of squaring their logs with a broadaxe, then using a unique handmade scribe called a vara to mark the profile of one log on to the other, and then hewing them with an axe to fit together very tightly. This fit eliminated the gaps other log builders of that era left between their logs that had to be filled with chinking. The corners were then held together with one of several types of notching. The double notch and the double dovetail are the most common types that they brought to America. The excuse me. The scribing, fitting, and notching of the logs in finished building is an art, one that is learned through years of experience. So, you might ask, why it's so important to learn about finished log construction when we want to talk about saunas? Well, it's because almost all early saunas introduced in America, in New Sweden, and built by all of those first Finns in the migration were built of logs in this fashion. It's also very important to understand that all of these first saunas were saunas or smoke saunas. They did not have a chimney. Whoop. Excuse me, I'm just having with my own. Something's happened to number 9. Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to read number 9, but number 9 has disappeared from the face of the earth here. So what did these saunas look? Because number 10 here will work out. So what did these saunas that were built by the first New Sweden Finns look like? Although there are no surviving 17th century saunas still standing, a drawing exists of a 1699 sauna, and that's what we have here on our screen right now. And we can also look at what survives from the 18th century, because the saunas that were built in the 18th century would reflect the saunas that were built and brought to New Sweden. Here is the earliest. This is the earliest recorded drawing of a Finnish sauna. It was done by a Finnish architect in 1910, and as you can see, he notes on this that this is a 1699 sauna. Now, you will notice that it's a little higher than saunas that we're accustomed to seeing, and the reason for that is many of these larger saunas also doubled as a drying shed for the grain. Now, you would do that if you didn't have a separate building called a rihi, which is a drying shed. So this larger sauna could serve both of those purposes. In this picture, we see two slightly different types of saunas. The upper one has an enclosed dressing room, which often doubled for a place to do other household chores, such as weaving or washing. The lower example simply has a protective overhang. Because of the multiple use front room, the upper one seems to have been more common in the US, although I have seen several saunas that have just the overhang. Now, as you see from the slide, both of these that you're looking at are saunas in Finland. This is what predated the saunas that came to this country. But this is what they brought with them because this is what they knew. Some saunas had nothing attached to the front, like this drawing made of a Savo sauna that still exists on a Forest Finns farmstead in New Sweden. It's quite small and has no dressing area. In these saunas, dressing was done at the house. The design is very likely the type that was built by the Forest Finns in New Sweden and is the style built by a number of 19th century immigrant Finns. I've seen a number of saunas in the United States that do not have any overhang or any dressing room. Some, oh, excuse me, this cutaway shows how a Savo sauna functions. Now, keep in mind, all of the first saunas in this country were Savo saunas. This cutaway illustrates how it works. The fireplace, or the kiuas, is built with a pile of rocks that has a cavity in which the fire is burned for several hours to heat the rocks. The smoke passes through the rocks and circulates in the room, heating the log walls. And of course, at the same time, the smoke covers everything with a film of black soot. When the rocks are very hot, the fire is allowed to burn out and the smoke is released from the room through an open door and a wall or roof vent. In early days, it was not known that smoke was a carcinogenic. In fact, it was believed to be good for you. The drawing shows a small bucket and a dipper near the bather. This holds the water to be sprinkled on the rocks to produce the levla, which steam. The bather is shown holding a vista, birch branches, to beat his skin with to increase the blood circulation. And washing water is heating at the kiuas. In early Finnish saunas, each bather used only about 1.5 liters of water with which to wash. Think about that the next time you take a shower. Note the double roof construction, with the inner one covered with sand for insulation. The walls are, of course, fitted logs. My mother used to say about the soot, you know he's a real Finn if he comes out of a Savo sauna cleaner than when he went in. Her childhood years were in a Savo sauna. Outsiders often satirized or misunderstood Finnish sauna customs. Here we see a depiction of a sauna by a traveler to Finland in 1798, who found the practice of nude mixed bathing unimaginable. Amandus Johnson included this and several other unflattering descriptions of the Finns in his two-volume history of New Sweden. Now might be a good time to answer the question that people frequently ask. Why were these early saunas built of logs? Well, it's a two-part answer. First, trees, and therefore logs, were abundant. It's a fact that most buildings before the late 1800s in Finland were constructed of logs, including very large churches. The Finns perfected the art of log building. When they came to America, They settled in remote areas that, again, trees were the available material to build with. One side note about buildings in Finland, and many of you have been there, and I learned this from my brothers because they did not recognize that many buildings that you see in the cities and towns that have siding on them, people assume that they're lumber buildings. They are not. Many of those buildings are log buildings underneath that siding. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me, I didn't finish it. Secondly, log buildings are excellent for retaining heat. That's why, even in New England, where most everything else was board in construction, logs were used when possible for early saunas. We often joke you can heat a sauna and a log cabin with just a match. It's fairly common to see only the sauna sections were built of logs and the dressing sections are built out of lumber. When chimneys began to be used, a second stove was often added to the dressing room so that it could serve as a summer kitchen.
Frank, I just wanted to ask you
Yeah.
to move, if you could move your papers away from the microphone. They're causing kind of a rustling noise.
Oh,
that
okay.
They're
All
getting,
right.
so
How's
just,
that? We'll try that.
I think that'll be better. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. Unfortunately, somehow or other it deleted one of my slides, and so I'm not in sequence with my papers and my slides on the board. So so I'm kind of having to
No problem. Just get everything out there and it's
okay.
very interesting.
All right. For centuries, Finnish cabins were also smoke cabins or savotupas. They did not have a chimney, and they were heated much in the same fashion as the sauna. The cabins of the Finns in New Sweden were definitely savusaunas. Although smoke cabins were converted to chimneyed fireplaces much earlier than the savusaunas, some of them were still in use in the 1920s. This picture here that we're looking at is a sauna in Finland in use in 1924 when that photo was taken. From 1660 to 1860, migration of Finns had ceased to America, and most of the material evidence of their existence had disappeared. Although a few buildings do survive, including the Nofnagel cabin in is near Swedesboro, New Jersey, and a log house that the Martinen family that had in what is now Chester, Pennsylvania. Probably the most dramatic Finnish American historical event during that period was when a Finn, John Morton, who was the great grandson of Marty Martinen of New Sweden, who we just mentioned in the other slide, who was also a Pennsylvania delegate, cast the deciding vote on the Declaration of Independence, ensuring that America was going to go to war with England. By the 1860s, a few Finns began again coming to America, some to the West Coast and others to Minnesota and Michigan. And I'm not going to get into the argument of whether they got to Michigan first or Minnesota first. We'll leave that up to those guys. However, The largest number did not arrive until the 1880s to the 1920s, which was called the Great Migration. Again, they brought with them their log construction techniques and, of course, the sauna. Although log construction techniques had not changed since the New Sweden era, the cabins were no longer savotupas, having by then added chimneys to their fireplaces. However, the saunas were still savo saunas. All of the first saunas built in America by the 1800s immigrant Finns were smoke saunas like those in New Sweden. Also, most of them were built out of logs. However, I have found a few New England lumber savo saunas. Remnants of many of these early savo saunas are still visible today, although most are in various stages of deterioration. Some of the early savo saunas, which were converted and chimneys added, still survive today. In my 10 years of research, I have scoured the Finnish communities in the US and Canada trying to locate an intact sauna, not a sauna that had been a sauna and had been converted. I've seen many of them, nor one that was replicated for historical purposes, but one that was never upgraded or altered. Well, in 2020, my efforts paid off when I located one in Michigan near Tapiola, south of Hancock. It was like finding the Holy Grail for a sauna researcher. By the 1920s, most American Finns were converting their smoke saunas into chimneyed versions. This was usually done by the second generation. Many simply abandoned the old Savo saunas and built new ones. Finns no longer saw the advantage of smoke and, in fact, found it quite unacceptable. Finns were becoming more Americanized, and the old traditions that held the original immigrants didn't have the same appeal for the new generations. When Finns began converting to the much cleaner chimneyed sauna, they had two choices: either attempt to clean up or cover up the old Savo sauna or build a new one. Both options are evident in Finnish communities. Very few Finns retained any kind of smoke sauna past 1920. When it was time to convert, if a new sauna was built, it often was made of frame lumber. The reason was simple. Most second generation Finns did not know the art of log building, and the immigrant generation was aged beyond being capable of doing the hard work of hewing the logs. Also, it was a matter of simplicity. Lumber was readily available by the 1920s and very affordable. Sometimes, when the first generation passed on, the use of the sauna was abandoned completely. The same phenomenon occurred in Finland with the conversion of the Savo sauna into a chimneyed sauna. But the practice of using sauna was never abandoned by the Finland Finns. Today, there are still over 3.2 million working saunas for 5.2 million Finns. To some extent today, the Savo sauna is gaining a new following in Finland, and new ones are being constructed. I did have the opportunity to take a sauna in Finland in 1997. Understanding Finnish culture. As you can read here, this is a quote that I took out of Risto Appala's book. I thought he put it so well when he talked about the sauna. So I'm going to pause for just a minute and let everyone read that. So we see from here that the sauna or the sauna is not just a place for a Saturday night bath. It served many purposes. It served as a birthplace. The sauna was clean, warm, and sterile, as the walls were covered with a bacteria resistant soot. Not too many years ago, there were still some American Finns who had been born in a sauna. It was used for household chores. Many were done there: spinning, rug weaving, washing, or cooking and canning were also done there. The sauna I attended as a boy still was used for canning and rug weaving. Beer and spirits could also be made there. If you didn't have a drying shed, the grain and the malt could be processed in the sauna. As a boy, I drank a homemade beer called Kalia, which was made only at haying time in our community to quench the thirst in the fields. Healing was an important function of the sauna. An old Finn called it the poor man's pharmacy. Finns in the mother country and many first generation Finns in America believed very strongly in spells and natural healing methods. Finnish communities might have healers who would visit rural areas and practice their healing craft. One common healing method involved cupping or bleeding, the removing of bad blood from the body. This was done by making a small cut and then drawing out the blood by suction through cups made of animal horns. Claims were made that it lowered the blood pressure. All of these healings were performed in the sauna. Finns have for centuries believed in the healing powers in taking a sauna. Many still do. And today's modern health authorities tend to agree. The heat, the leula, the steam, and the intense perspiring are believed to remove the body's poisons. If a sauna and tar don't cure you, you're going to die. That's an old Finnish proverb. The beating with a vihta increases the blood circulation. Different types of leaves can cast different healing spells in the hands of the healer. By the way, sauna is the only place you can legally beat your wife. Well, that would be with a vihta, of course. For those who have never tried it, you should know that it does not hurt. Although many of today's American Finns don't literally believe in most of the sauna lore and spells that have come down through the centuries, it's certainly fun to understand what people believed and what their significance was. The tanto is a very significant in Finnish lore. Tontos, or elves, come in all sizes and shapes. Some are good and some are malicious. Every Finn needs a Tonto in their sauna. The sauna Tonto protects it from burning down while keeping away all the evil spirits. But you must respect them. Don't get too boisterous in your sauna or too noisy. Sauna is a place of reverence and should be treated as you would your church. Everyone speaks softly, and children must behave themselves. If you should inadvisedly raise the ire of your sauna tanto, beware, he may well cause havoc. He has been known to make cold water boil or blood to drip from the roof of your sauna, or he just might burn it down. Remember, respect your elf. Preserving the Finnish sauna traditions. Unfortunately, the taking of a sauna has all but disappeared in American Finnish culture. After the war, Finnish communities faded rapidly, and younger Finns abandoned the farms of their forefathers and went to the big city for education and jobs. Unlike Finland, where even city folks have saunas in their apartments, American Finns have abandoned their sauna culture when they left the farm. The older generation passed on, and so did the farms, either to the English or to the developers. Many old saunas have been razed or fallen into ruin. I know because I've spent over 10 years locating and documenting what remains. Fortunately, some of them have been saved, and some haven't. May they rest in peace. There is, however, a resurgence of interest in saunas. The health aspects have made many who never considered it before begin building them. And most are not Finnish. My good friends in Canada report also a real increase in recent years in saunas that dot the lake shores. Presently, there appears to be a rather lively market for commercial sauna builders. My friend Houston Utanen builds portable modern saunas in Duluth. There are some of us second, third, and fourth generation Finns who either never lost interest or returned to the sauna. As I travel across the Finnish country, I always enjoy to be able to share a sauna with my fellow Finns. Fortunately, several Finn camps in New England and in the Midwest have retained and still operate their saunas. Jim Curti, who you all know, moved and restored a beautiful old Michigan sauna to its former beauty. It's one of my favorite sauna stops as I travel, as is Marianne Ahola's cozy little sauna in Maine. My personal sauna life began in my teenage years when the Lahti boys, my brother and I went to sauna almost every Saturday night. A small group of Finns gathered either at the Heikkilä's or at the Stenberg's place for saunas. They took turns each week striking their sauna. Since the Long Valley Finns, as we were called, were by then primarily second generation, there was no mixed bathing. The men went into the sauna first, when it was still the hottest. And then the ladies, who had set out the obligatory nisso and coffee for us guys, then they went in. We boys, knowing proper Finnish etiquette, did not talk much with the older men unless we were spoken to. But we did enjoy listening to their conversations, both in the sauna and at the table afterwards. Since we all lived on farms, that was obviously the major topic of discussion. After many years, I returned to my roots. My first sauna was at my house in historic Rosebery, where for years we would entertain our friends, mostly non Finns, every Saturday night for sauna. I must have ticked off the sauna tanto though, because I had two fires. When I moved to Boise, I converted a small ATV shed into my sauna. I mean, who needs an ATV in Boise? Now, my daughter and granddaughters come by monthly for sauna nights, for Saturday night sauna. They're going to be here today. Every Christmas, we observe the Christmas Eve sauna tradition, still religiously adhered to by most Finns in Finland. We celebrate the Christmas sauna, we enjoy lutefisk or lipiakala, and we have Santa Lucia. And we light the real candles on the tree in memory of those of our ancestors who've gone before. On New Year's, we have our sauna, and then we melt and drop hot lead into a bucket of cold water to foretell what the new year will bring. There's a great article in the recently arrived Finnish American Reporter about what I just talked about, the tradition of melting lead at New Year's. Believe me, you can read a blob of molten lead to predict any future you want. As I conclude my sauna story, what remains is one thing. I'm asking everyone to help find an original log sauna or the evidences of one in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. I've discovered our Finnish sauna roots everywhere in New England except those two states. I conclude my sauna story with my all-time favorite sauna. I can just kind of imagine the story here. Walt wanted a sauna like he knew in Finland. He was determined to have one. Now, you remember when we talked about the closely fitting logs that are scribed and fitted together with no chinking in between? That's what he was talking about. Unfortunately, in New England, most of the big trees had been cut down. So he had to use what he had available. Very small, very crooked trees. But as I look at this sauna and I look at the workmanship that he put into this to make it fit, to make it be what it should be, a very tightly fitted sauna, I say this is New England Finnish sisu. It's a great sauna. For anyone who is interested, my book, Finnish Log Construction, the art is out of print, but I do have it on CD, which if you wanted to, you can have it printed off the CD. It's not locked. But those are available for $15 plus shipping. Just shoot me an email and we can arrange if anybody's interested in that. My emails are at the bottom, imfin@icloud.com. Well, guys, I'm finished. Thanks for zooming in today. And now we'll get out of this thing, and I'll be available for some questions. Hopefully some things have come up and you. So Marilyn, what do I do next? Stop sharing.
Okay, what you're gonna do, first of all, thank you. That was fascinating. You're going to stop share screen at the bottom. There you
Okay.
go. And now you can, there you
Ah,
go.
here we are. We're all here.
Yeah. And there are a lot of comments in the chat if people, really interesting things, so people can read that. We've got 49 people on, and I know there's going to be some questions. I'm not sure how many of you know how to raise your hand, but if you look at the very bottom where it says mute, stop video, security, and all that stuff, there's a button that says reactions. And if you click on that, then it says raise hand. So that's the simplest way. I'll look for raised hands, okay? Or you can just raise your hand.
Surely I didn't answer everyone's questions, did I? Or maybe I just did.
Frank,
Okay, I think
Frank, are
Lillian
you,
has a question. If you'd unmute yourself, Lillian. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, here I am. Hi.
Hi.
It was so good to get the email for this program because Jolie, as you know, you stayed with her in Maine. I think she's on today, but I didn't see her
Yeah, I
picture.
said hi, but I didn't hear back from Jo. Oh, there she is. Hi, Jolene. Hi. Yes.
And so I was so glad, and she had emailed me too to make sure that I would get to see it. So it's exciting. Thank you so much for doing this. And it was really good because it brings back memories in Maine where we were 10 kids and we had a Saturday night sauna. And yes, and Arthur just reminded me too that when we moved here in North Andover, we had to build a sauna. It wasn't like the old one in Maine, but you know what? My brother came down and built the chimney and everything, so it worked and it was great. And I never missed a night when we went to Finland. I think I was the only one that was doing the sauna every night.
Good for you.
It was really great. And my cousin Eric in Monson is building one now. I haven't seen it, so I don't know what plans, but anyway, so that's good to know. And I love history, so that's a great part. But Frank, I want to say that in Monson, Maine, where the Finns started coming, probably in the late 1800s, that I know my great uncle came from Finland and they worked in the slate quarries. They are going to have their 200th anniversary. And I have given your email to the people that are organizing it and also the American, the Finnish people in Maine that have the groups. I think are going to contact you, but it's going to be wonderful because I think it will bring people back and to make them think, and hopefully they'll bring families. But that's going on, and I was told that August is going to be the big deal. I think they're going to bring the single, what do they call it, the narrow gauge railroad, you know, back that haul the slate and all that. So there'll be a lot, and I'm sure the Swedes will have something too. But and we still have the Finnish club, the Monson Finnish Farmers building is still there in good shape.
Yeah, I've been to Muncie a
Lillian.
couple of times, and there's a couple of saunas in there that I'd like to go back and take a look at. One of them is in pretty bad shape. The other one is not.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I would love that. So hopefully they will contact me so that maybe I can make it a part of this summer's trip. So
Right, we have a couple of other hands raised.
let's go and do it.
Esther and then Pamela. Glad that you figured it out. So Esther, if you'd unmute yourself. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, good.
Sorry about that. I just had a quick question. Does your book have instructions on constructing the sauna in it?
No, no, my book's more about the history of building. It discusses how the buildings were done and fitted, and then it gives a lot of examples in various parts all across country of what remains today. But it's not a how-to book to build. But I will put this out there that I have, I've helped people to, if they need some advice occasionally, and there are some really good books out there about building saunas. But if people need some advice or questions or everything, now I do know that people have used my book by looking at it and then building a sauna, but it doesn't give you, step-by-step information. But I'm willing to help
thank you.
anybody.
Okay, and I
Thank
think
you.
Pamela, if you could unmute.
Yeah, I had a similar question about building. My father immigrated from Finland to Canada in 1924,
Okay.
and he built a sauna on the St. Mary's River, which joins Lake Superior to Lake Huron. And he did the traditional log construction. He captured logs floating down the river from the Abitibi pulp and paper. So he built his boat, and there were runaway logs, and he would pull them to shore.
I love that.
That's how he made it. And I do remember my earliest memories were being carried there because I was probably 2 or 3. And every, Saturday night we went to the sauna and everybody washed up. And so it was a happening. I think we now have a place on Lake Huron near Parry Sound in Canada, 3 miles north of Toronto. And I think, it would be fun to build something. I think we could look into places like there's a large Finnish community still, in Sudbury and around there, north of Toronto.
Right.
And so that's one thought I had, is to look around to see if there are people out there now who have, are really marketing saunas, because I think it's become popular. And one reason is in Canada on Georgian Bay, this is north of Toronto on Lake Huron, local bylaws respect the Finnish tradition. And you can now, now there are setbacks, right? You can't build on the water
Within 100 feet.
within 100 feet or 40 feet. The exception in bylaws is the sauna.
Yeah.
You can build a sauna on the water anywhere because they respect the Finnish tradition. There are specifications. I think it can't be bigger than 10 by 10 feet.
Mhm.
But so now, of course, all the Anglophones are terribly interested in the sauna to see what they can build there. So interesting.
Pretended.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I did read that just the other day about the law, because I know that a number of people have contacted me about building saunas by the lake, and unfortunately we have some rather rigorous rules. It's a lot to do with the local agencies, but yeah, it's pretty hard to get it by the lake anymore. Do you have any pictures of your folks' sauna that anyone who has pictures of their saunas, whether they're log or lumber, either one, that would be willing to share them with me? I'd ask you to take my email down and just share photos with me, because there's a lot of saunas obviously that I haven't found or I haven't seen, even though I've seen a lot.
It's your email. I am Finn@iCloud.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I'll look, because now you've, gotten my interest up, because I do have some of those really early pictures.
I'd love to see them. I'd love to have copies.
So good.
Thank
Thank
you. Vitos.
I just wanted to lift up something that was in the chat from Dan, if you haven't read it. He says, my great aunt Marja leaned against the back of a blackened sauna and asked a man she was interested in to wash her back, which was a common practice, and that led to marriage. And
I haven't heard that one, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So take the time to read what's in the chat. People have commented on many things, and that will be, when you get the link, all of that will be in there too. I wanted to ask you, Frank, when you dropped the lead in, what did it say 2022 was going to be?
Mine was rather scattered. Shall we say? So I just said that it looks like to me to be a boat. So I means that I can go someplace this summer because we're all worried about the virus and of course I spend my summers traveling. So I said mine looks like a boat because I want to travel.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.